This is something I'm sure you're being asked a lot about, but I think it's so phenomenal to watch this film because the brilliance of it, as I was saying, was that it's an important film, but it's also a very entertaining film at the same time. But for me, there are a lot of kids who are going to watch this movie, look at that screen, and see themselves in this character. And I'm just curious what you feel, what responsibility you feel, and how that makes you feel that kids are going to look up at this screen and see themselves in the film.
Well, specifically for Miles Morales and how that makes me feel, to be honest, when I booked it, it was all for selfish reasons. Like, I wanted to be Miles Morales for me, not for anybody else, you know? Marking off of my to-do list and things I wanted. And I realized shortly after, my brother made a comment. He's my older brother. He was like, he has 2 sons, MJ and Matthew. And he was like, well, now at least I can let, your nephews watch something from you, And I was like, they couldn't watch Dope or The Get Down, or any of the things I have that's coming out. And I'm like, so Spider-Man is good for that. And then yesterday we did interviews with some moms, and they're like, really, that's what really made it real for me, and I think Jake too, but like, sure. It's like, yo, like these are parents talking, like genuinely excited about what their kids are about to watch because they got to see it. And but it's not just Miles, with great power does come great responsibility, but I think the major point of this movie is that anybody can wear the mask. Yeah, the same thing with Miles, it's the same thing with Peter. Somebody's gonna look at Peter and relate just as much as they relate to Miles, because it's a different version of Peter. Yeah. Same thing with Gwen. Jake says all the I hate taking his lines, but it's so great, so he can repeat it. But he has twin daughters, and they like to dress up like Spider-Man.
Well, when my daughters were first here and I was in this job, they were never that excited about me being Spider-Man. And then when they would want to play it, they were calling themselves Spider-Man Girl. And it actually made me a little bit sad until I really realized what Chris and Phil and what Sony was trying to do, and that's give Spider-Man to everybody while not taking Peter out. It's just adding to it, because now if they want to look like somebody, they could be Spider-Gwen, and now they're in the Spider-Verse too.
Without giving anything away, I'm going to vaguely talk about this, but I'm very fascinated to know, like, the art of a Stan Lee cameo is very interesting, and it's a very big part of the Marvel films. Without saying where it is or what happens, I'm curious, when you do a scene that he is in, do you get to do it with him? Did you get to meet him? Without saying what the scene is, but I'm wondering what your process was on that moment.
No, I think I met him in passing. I think I saw him with Avi, but again, like I'm just like, hey, how you do? Like, to me, I move a little bit more like to myself, and I'm like, hey, but
you didn't record with him, right?
I never recorded with. I didn't meet him in a way where I could say I know Stan Lee or he knew me or nothing like that. It's just in passing. Hello, how are you? Oh, this is Miles. Yes. Oh, it's like that. It's nothing. Yeah. But I'm honored to be involved in his imagination.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? A part of a project that was like in the universe of superheroes that this man created.
I am very curious about how you voiced the scenes when you're wearing the mask. So when you're in the booth, do they still put something over you to make it sound like you're behind a mask?
No, I think that's like
digital.
Yeah, they did that both. Yeah, we just do. The only thing is when we're doing the action, we got to use through the action, but the mask stuff was all the same.
Like when I'm Peter! All that stuff going on is pretty much that. Thwip!
Is that the sound effect you had to make for real?
Well, he made that.
That's hilarious.
That's a scene where we're doing it together, going thwip, thwip.
One of the things I love about this movie is the idea of taking a leap. And without giving anything away specifically, the idea of you becoming Miles Morales requires you to take a leap or become Spider-Man. I love that moment. So I'm curious for each of you real fast, do you have that leap moment in your own life that you feel like you took that leap to become the actor you are today? Do you remember that specific leap you took?
Yeah, I was 26 years old, living in my dad's attic in Chicago, broke. And I jumped in a Hyundai Accent that was stick shift with no AC, and I drove to Los Angeles with no job and no money. And I said, I'm going to make this thing work.
And here we are.
And then, 14 years later, here we are.
And real quick for you, Shameik?
The leap, I think my biggest leap has been, I don't know, man. I'm not even sure. What my biggest leap has been is like my mindset, changing the people I was around, and
this dude's about to have a huge career, and so the leap is gonna be from this leaping to the next.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I just think I have had a very sheltered upbringing, and while I've still like experienced I'm still street smart, but I'm not like, I'm very sheltered. I was in the Young Marines and all boys military school, Christian school, then a performing arts school. Then I went to public school and learned about like my community and stuff. But otherwise, I was like, Anyway, so I think my leap is going from that like a very like forward, to like just dancing and expressing myself and finding out who I am, past like my talent and stuff. Like who is Shameik for real? Like, that's my biggest leap right now. I'm finding out what my biggest leap is.
That's cool. Sent out this interview. That's kind of cool. Guys, thank you so much. Guys, thank you. All right, so I'm a huge fan of the way this film looks. And I know we can't get into too much details. We don't have a ton of time. But the animation is unlike anything I've ever seen before. There's like almost lines through the screen. And it's so gorgeous. I believe there's like matte paintings involved. Can you talk about how you achieved the look of the way it looks on screen?
The big idea was like, how do we get the artist's hand onto the screen, right? How can we, so that's why it's a combination of like CGI technology and just people painting things.
Oh, there is hand drawing.
The animators drawing stuff right onto the faces of the characters.
2D and 3D matched together in a whole new groundbreaking method that was invented for this movie.
What is? Can you briefly talk about the method itself? I'd love to know. I'm like
I
so
was
interested.
smart enough,
yeah.
but
So-
there's literally computer programmers that had to like rewrite all the software.
All
for
of the
image work.
textures and the lighting were done with like halftone dots and hatchings and painted techniques, and the CG animation, and then on top of it, artists were drawing lines, blurs, all sorts of things to give it a real hand-drawn feel, so it made you feel like you were walking into a comic book.
That's the coolest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Now, without giving anything away, I want to talk about the art of writing a Stan Lee cameo. Just like, what is the art form? Because they're always perfect, they're always funny, they're always surprising. Without saying what it is, what is the art to figuring out how you're going to do it? And then do you have to run it by him and say, are you okay with this? And I'm wondering what that was like for you.
I mean, I think the thing about Stan Lee is he's so game that he makes those things so winning. Because he's obviously really happy to be there, and he's so welcoming. I think with this bit, we felt like we had to do something that had more relevance to the plot of the story, because he's the godfather of Spider-Man, and he's the place that this all started.
And so, like, the idea always was, with this one, was like, well, we got to do something that honors his legacy. It can't just be sort of a passing thing. And now, obviously, with his passing, it takes on a whole nother emotional level to it. And we showed it to audiences in October at the New York Comic Con when he was still alive, and it was warm and happy. And now it's got it's a complicated thing, but it's still, I think, really inspirational.
This is something that may be like complicated to ask, but since he did pass, obviously before the film was released, legally speaking, do you have to go back and actually resubmit the film with the card of it, like in memoriam to him, that you kind of put up on the screen? How does that work from a filmmaking standpoint?
I mean, luckily or unluckily, we were still finishing the film.
Oh wow!
Yes.
And so, but we did scramble to put that tribute in the credits.
Cool.
For Stan and Steve Ditko, just because we felt like, they both passed away this year, and they're the reason we're all here.
Now, one of the things I love with this movie is this idea of taking a leap, and this whole concept of Miles to become Spider-Man taking that leap. I'm curious if you guys can think about when you first started off in this business. Do you remember a specific leap you took to kind of get to where you are at the moment?
Oh gosh, I mean, the biggest thing is to like trust one another and to trust the other filmmakers you work with, and that's like the beauty of this movie is we got to work with great filmmakers from top to bottom, from our 3 directors to all the department heads, and and the collaboration that Chris and I have had for more than 20 years. Like to trust one another that his creative instincts are going to be additive, and if he really wants to do something, I'm just going to embrace it.
And to always to try new things and
Go out of your comfort zone.
Yes, go out of your comfort zone. If you're going to a movie and you're paying the money to go see it, you want a fresh, unique experience. You don't want to feel like something I've seen a million times before. And so we're always asking, like, how can we make this new? How can we make this different? How can we make this something you've never seen? And it's not always going to work. And hopefully this time it did.
The beauty of, I'm sorry.
Our filmmaking style is to jump into the deep end of the pool, and not worry about the consequences. And with this movie, it was like, can we make a movie that looks like nothing you've ever seen? Well, maybe. I don't know. A year ago, we didn't know what this movie looked like. We were all just like stacking hands and guessing that we would figure it out.
And one last quick question for you. I think the voice work in this film is brilliant. Besides the fact that this movie also covers an important topic of diversity and representation, but also on top of that, it's an entertaining movie. It never takes itself too seriously, but when it does, it really hits you emotionally. That's the beauty of what you guys have created here. I'm curious about the voicing in the sense of when they're in the masks and Shameik and Jake are doing the voice work, do they put something in front of their face to get that muffled effect, or how do they achieve that sound in the movie if they're not covered?
That's all in the sound mix.
Really?
We had them do.
We have
their scenes.
an Oscar-winning sound mix team, and they're really good at that stuff.
But yeah, we did a bunch of scenes with Shameik and Jake together so they could play off of each other, and they really built on each other's energy a lot. So having them have that natural thing where they could actually look each other in the eyes and they didn't have like crazy masks on was really valuable.
You know, the same way that we're leaving the artist's hand visible, you know, on the screen, we're trying to leave the actors' performances visible. We try to keep all the idiosyncratic things that happen between the words. We don't clean that stuff up. The weird breaths, the hesitations, all the things that that give it texture, that's gold to an animator.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can hear something going on, and that's inspiring. So our tracks are really messy sounding for that reason.
Well, I love talking to you guys. Thank you for making a movie that makes me excited to come in here and geek out with you guys.
Oh my
Thanks,
gosh,
Kevin.
man.
It's
It's
Truly
great
a
to see you.
Brilliant film.
Oh,
Really.
thank you, brother.
And you guys, just thank you for